My name is Jake Cho, and this is my presentation on odontogenesis, which is tooth formation. I'm going to discuss the stages of tooth development, as well as touch on some developmental abnormalities that can happen. Odontogenesis occurs in both your deciduous teeth or baby teeth, as well as the permanent teeth. Deciduous teeth starts to form at 6 weeks in utero, while permanent teeth start at 14 weeks in utero and continue up to 5 years of age. There are two main tissue layers that will direct formation and localization of teeth. Primitive oral epithelium is derived from the ectoderm, and ectomesenchyme is derived from craniofacial neural crest cells. Development starts with thickening of oral epithelium into primary epithelial bands around both the upper and lower jaws. These thick bands are horseshoe-shaped and will serve as a base for the future teeth development. At week 7, the primitive oral epithelium bifurcates into the vestibular lamina and dental lamina. The vestibular lamina gives rise to the oral vestibule, which is the space between the lips or cheeks and your teeth. The dental lamina gives rise to your future dentition. A here is the primary epithelial band. C is the vestibular band, and B is the dental lamina. Signal proteins cause the dental lamina to invaginate into the ectomesenchyme, into what is known as a dental placode. These dental placodes are the physicians of the future teeth. So there should be 20 placodes for the 20 deciduous teeth. This starts tooth formation in what is known as the bud stage. At week 8 is this bud stage where the placode has extended from the dental lamina into the ectomesenchyme. The ectomesenchymal cells proliferate and condense around the bud that forms here. The invagination is now called the enamel organ because it eventually becomes the enamel of the tooth. The ectomesenchymal cells that condense around the bud are called the dental papilla, and this will give rise to the future dentin and pulp layers of the tooth. The tooth bud is a unique stage in that it has differential proliferation, and this means that cells grow at different rates depending on their location. In the enamel organ, cells in the center grow slower than cells at the peripheries, and this leads to invagination, which creates the next stage, the cap stage. This is at week 9, and a concave region forms and sits on top of the condensed ectomesenchymal cells into a ball of the dental papilla. The cells at the concave region are columnar shaped and form the inner enamel epithelium. And the cells at the periphery are cuboidal shaped and form the outer enamel epithelium. As the enamel organ continues to grow, the invagination will deepen, and the inner and outer epithelial layers will eventually meet each other. Cells between the two epithelial layers secrete glycosaminoglycans into their extracellular space, and glycosaminoglycans are very hydrophilic and will attract water molecules into the enamel organ here. This pushes on the cells located inside the enamel organ and turns them into star-shaped stellate cells. And this area is called the stellate reticulum now. Another important aspect here is that non-dividing cells located in the inner enamel epithelium are known as enamel knots. And this is the signaling center to regulate the formation of tooth cusp. So the number and position of enamel knots determines the number and location of future cusps during tooth morphogenesis, where you will develop your crown. The ectomesenchymal cells of the dental papilla continue to accumulate near the cap invagination. Cells surrounding the enamel organ in dental papilla are called the dental follicle, and they will eventually give rise to the periodontal layer tissue, so the gum surrounding it. So here's a picture of the columnar cells of the inner enamel epithelium and the enamel knot as well, and the cuboidal cells of the outer enamel epithelium, and also the star-shaped reticular layer. This will eventually disappear, and the stellate reticulum will go away, and the two enamel layers will meet. Also of note, successional dental lamina will arise at the cap stage of the tooth. This will form the permanent successor to the deciduous tooth through this same odontogenesis process with the same stages. So it branches off from its deciduous precursor. Permanent molars, on the other hand, are known as accessional teeth because they do not have a deciduous tooth predecessor in the dental arch of your baby teeth. Instead, they form a posterior extension of the dental lamina from one of the other deciduous teeth, and this will form the permanent molar. The enamel organ continues to grow and assumes a bell shape. The inner enamel epithelial cells will differentiate and become what's known as ameloblast, and this will eventually form the enamel of the tooth. The dental papilla cells differentiate to become odontoblast, which will form the dentin. And then the cervical loop down here is where the inner and outer epithelial layers meet each other on both sides. We have the cervical loop. And this gives rise to the root sheath, which proliferates to form the root of the tooth. Also in this stage, the dental lamina disintegrates, which separates the developing tooth from the oral epithelium, and fragments left behind usually degenerate, but in some cases, it can actually give rise to supernumerary teeth in a condition known as hyperdontia. So you have more than the teeth that you're supposed to have. So 20 for deciduous teeth, 32 for permanent teeth. In the advanced bell stage, the stellate reticulum collapses and the ameloblast and outer enamel epithelium fuse together, creating a condensed single epithelial layer for the enamel. And then the crown forms as well during this stage, and dentin and enamel are mineralized and turned into hard tissues. The tooth can now begin to elongate and is ready for eruption, which is a very complex process for both sets of teeth to enter into the oral cavity. One last thing that I wanted to mention is how teeth can develop in other body parts besides the oral cavity. Because I've seen this in like clickbait news articles where they're talking about teeth growing in weird places where you wouldn't expect them to. So I wondered how this could be possible. And it actually is through what's called a teratoma. And this is a tumor made of different tissue types, and it has the potential to differentiate into really any kind of tissue because it's a germ cell tumor. So there have been cases where There have been teeth, brain matter, or eye tissue found inside teratomas in different body locations. In this case, in this picture shown here, a woman in the US had pelvic surgery to remove a mature ovarian teratoma, which contained hair and several tooth fragments. So it is possible to also grow teeth through this tumor teratoma process as well. And that's everything. Here are my works reference.